So the brief is, you've had the last 2 days. We want to now look into what change, could look like. And always remember, because it's a huge question, right? The most important factor for each of us will be, what do I care about? What do I think my superpowers are? So I can align my superpower with what I care about, with what I've learned, and what change I want to see. And it's like there is, there will be no two alike situation here, because you will each bring who you are. So you think change looks like beauty, which is what I see Venice creating. Change looks like music. Change looks like real stories getting out there, that doesn't embellish, that doesn't sensationalize, but tells the truth. All of these things. There is, infinite number of topics that can be discussed. Just remember, you could all convene a topic, then we'll have to figure out how we do this. If there are 10 topics, then we could have a session, from 10:30 to 11, 11:30 to 12, so that you can all buggy between your 5 and 5. Does that make sense? But if there's 5 topics, we could just have one longer session. So all is possible. This is open space. Key 2 cornerstones of open space: passion, responsibility. So you convene, you stay with what you convene, and others go around wherever they feel passionate about. And then there's a law of 2 feet. You just go wherever your passion takes you. All right, go for it, guys. And then please give them the mic. You have to pick up the paper, say a topic, write your name, and where do you want to convene. So making the NCA work is Emily, the topic Emily wants to convene. Phoebe is convening.
Yep. Sorry. Hi everyone, I'm doing quite a general one. It's education. I think it's really interesting about what our system is now lah. Especially if we want to talk about creating new generation and then how these young minds are molded, and then what change we can bring realistically ataupun idealistically. So yeah.
Okay.
Hello, Islan sini. So, saya akan buka kedai yang akan jual barang ni lah. Support system for the stateless movement. Saya rasa dia penting. Sebab saya pun ada satu, macam Mukmin share kemarin, saya pun ada satu best friend. Yang saya kawan dari kecil lagi lah. Tapi dia undocumented lah sampai sekarang. So, interesting juga lah mau tahu macam mana kita boleh support in term of anything lah. Dorang punya movement. And after dengar dorang punya sharing kemarin, I think dorang pun need support juga lah. In any way. So either it's media ka, moral ka, anything lah.
So my topic or my shop is art and plus media in power systems. Well, specifically, why choose topics? All the topics on there, it's parts of it anyways. But I feel like it should be something on its own. Especially like topics like, for example, why don't we have investigative journalists here, right? Because all this can play in that is support, but I think tackling it at its core is what needs to start first. So
Open, the space is all open. This is all the topics. Your law, you only have one law, meaning you take yourself to where you are can contribute. So once you've contributed to your number one topic, then you go there, then you go there, you don't stay hanging out somewhere when you're no longer contributing. You can, then that means you become a butterfly. So the bumblebee typically also buzzes everywhere. You could go back and forth and helps cross-pollinate between topics. Saying, yeah, those guys said this, and I think it's relevant here, and you see what I mean? So you bring ideas across groups. Butterfly is you're involved, you are present, but you float. You kind of are in a different channel, if you like, observing, witnessing. You're present, but you're not saying anything. But you're there.
It's like you are contributing also, but a little bit only, and then you listen a little bit.
Yeah, you listen, you witness, you fly off, and you can go basically anywhere you want. Whoever comes are the right people. When it starts, it starts. What happened is the only thing that could have. When it's over, it's over. So yes, we say 45 minutes. If you're done in 30 minutes, your group, you're done. Everybody has contributed. You can feel a doneness of your topic. Yes?
We are from Stateless punya kedai. So we're discussing about support system of the Stateless movement. So the first one is information support. So information support. Oh, by the way, yang visit kedai saya, John, Isaac, Ilan, Stash, and Yanti, Noel. So information support, this is macam when they need information about documentation process, which school they can go, what they can do and everything, this kind of support lah we need to give to the settlers also. And John, you can add after my explanation lah, later after this. And then the second one is experiential and exchange program. This come from Russell and juga Stash, meaning that we pick like 10 people from the bandar to go into the settlers and to experience, have like tidur sana untuk berapa hari dan sebagainya. And then in that way we can kind of include them into our culture, meaning that we can expose ourselves to the stateless punya culture because they are rich with the culture kan. And then the third one is exposure or outreach for the movement. I think this is important. Yes, the stateless need the exposure, but I think the movement itself, like Borneo Comrade, Anak, they also need some kind of exposure outside to move forward, like trainings, capacity building, anything, any kind of exposure that that I think will be important for them to move forward, like community organizing punya training, this kind of thing lah. And then the fourth one is education support. like fund or beasiswa for the stateless. There now is some that can get that fund and beasiswa, but not all lah. And then John said that we can like expose them how to express, how to narrate, and make dia punya culture inclusive ba. We can narrate for them, but it is more powerful if they can narrate and express themselves about their culture, about their life. So maybe that's that kind of education support that we can help to give to them lah. Then infrastructure, this is like basic infrastructure lah, macam school, their home, the basic needs like electric and water, this kind of thing lah. And then this is from Ilan, humanizing the personalities, meaning that get rid of the word kesian from them. Don't always, kesian them, need to do this, need to hadap this benda hari-hari. But instead, we admire them, what they have in their culture, in their place, because they're rich with the culture. That's why they showcase their richness. That tikar lah konon, but I'm not that artistic lah. So, and then changing way we use language when we talk about settlers, meaning macam Ilan said tadi, macam kesian then want to go to this place, need to like boat lah, and then grab lah, pergi airport dan sebagainya. But how kalau kita yang make effort to go and meet them, and like we proud of them because they are part of us, and then they really have something to showcase their richness, not in terms of money but in terms of their culture lah, orang punya budaya, orang punya skills, kan weaver, diver, this kind of thing lah, orang punya survival skill. So this kind of thing that we need to showcase to the outside lah, and then we appreciate that culture and that richness. So yeah, that's it. John, you have anything to add?
I just kind of wanted to expand this whole outlook. It's bridging towards recognizing for them to recognize their rights as human, to recognize their own humanity and their own human values. So from information support to experiential and exchange program, education, infrastructure, we recognize it's for them and for us to recognize them as humans, and what their rights are essentially. And another thing I wanted to expand on was the education support, in regards of teaching them how to express and how to narrate, and allowing them to tell their own stories and writing their own narratives. So it gives us a more accurate picture or perception as to what their culture is about, what do they believe in, and what do they have to live through, and giving them like that space, or facilitating that space to share their history and their traumas. And if we hear it from their voices, as compared to we tell it ourselves, we may be able to find solutions that will actually resolve issues on the ground. So yeah, this is our kedai.
This is what we had. A lot of ideas were thrown around. So basically what we concluded lah kan is number 4. The education system needs a reform overall, and we had a lot of reasons for it being that way, because we needed to restructure the learning system from our sharing. We have customizing it to the students' landscape. Macam we've heard discussion about how this syllabus comes from KPM kan, and then we know how special each district is in Sabah itself, and yet the children are learning something like put in a box. Macam everything is the same for everyone ba. but it doesn't cater to what they need. So customizing it to their landscape, meaning they learn about their paddy, they learn about weaving, their culture, their history, their geography. And I think Neville brought it up last time about in Sagama, how Sagama itself has a rich history, but then the school, the kids don't know anything about it. And then we're learning history about its international history, and then it's the Malaysian history, and then there's nothing about Sabah. And then we have the kinds of activities. Liana had a lot of ideas about that. We have multi-sensory garden. It's like a therapy education, and it caters to kids, it caters to adults, it caters to teenagers. And we also talked about abolishing the science stream, the art stream semua tu kan, like we get to choose what we want to learn, and focus on holistic education, mental health, physical well-being, and Yilan's mentioned art education as well. I really like how she put it, because she says it promotes critical thinking, and that's what we are lacking in our schools. We, apa sih yang cakap tadi tu, it's like they're producing obedient little factory workers ba, kan our education system sekarang. And then this art education will promote critical thinking, analysis, expression, art literacy, where we will be able to interpret motifs kata Ilan, macam tu, like how we see our traditional art macam tu kan. And that's something really beautiful lah. And that's what a holistic education looks like. And rehabilitation versus punishment is also really important, because I've been to schools and attended schools with kids who are macam delinquents lah. They are kena reject all sekolah kerajaan, so they are thrown to this school that I attend. And then the teacher punya approach when they do something wrong is just, okay, suspend you. Don't care if you cannot sit for your SPM, don't care if your whole future is effed up, you're suspended. So it does nothing for them. And we have counseling units, but these counselors are counseling for the wrong kind of stuff. And that needs to be changed. Lah, kan? Those are the tools that we have, but we are not really utilizing it. And then what else? Okay, for kids, we actually have a lot of education system in place. Like there's Montessori, and then Yana mentioned Reggio Emilia, I think. And but this kind of education is very exclusive ba. They capitalize this kind of teaching. So if you want to send your kids to Montessori punya education, you have to pay 1,500 per month. Padahal you can just do it in your own community, in your own house, and it should not be like that lah. And then there's also catering to teens and adults with more real life skills lah, to prepare them to, when they go and be independent or whatever. And then there's also tertiary level. This one Nilan also added, where we put more emphasis on vocational schools. Because they teach a lot of important skills, macam plumbers, electricians kata. And then we do have that in Sabah, we have that in Giat Mara, they offer this kind of skills. But then there's also this people punya perception like, oh, if you don't get to University A, that's where you go as your backup school, or just something to do with your future. So there's a lot of work to do in changing this perception also about this kind of school. And one way to do it is to make it more maybe innovative, more exciting for the kids, for the parents itself. And of course, there's the role of the teachers. We question who teaches our kids. And then they are also burdened by too much admin duty where they cannot focus on teaching. And then we have adults or parents. Yana said that most of the times they are also the issue where they do not have the capacity or the awareness to create an environment that actually supports their kids' development. Apa tu? And we had one example yang Pakos sedang buat under GKC kah? The SEEDS punya program. They actually have a campus now. School of Experiential and Entrepreneurial Development, Sabah. So they teach kids all these alternative things that we are learning in schools lah. Helpful skills that will actually be more beneficial to them. And yeah, I think I touched on everything. The literature and history about Sabah also is an important thing for us. Learning about our language, about philosophical thinking, and Yeah, itu sajalah in general. Ada Yana, you want to add anything?
I think you covered everything. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Oh ya, yang apa martial art tuh.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That can be apa tuh on the holistic education kata. They can maybe you can explain more about that one.
Yeah, we didn't actually go deeper into that. Cuma that's the thing with youth. They're active. So it's worth to go deeper kalau education can involve more active learnings. For example, how do they apa macam martial art gitu kan, like foraging, like active movement, begitu ba, like discipline, learning discipline, orang punya mental discipline can be developed through active punya activities lah, like martial art. So it's, yeah, we didn't actually go deeper into that, but I think it's worth to incorporate also lah. Yeah.
What are some of the things that could be done or could be put in place to make the NCA a feasible undertaking lah. And so we talked a lot about one, like putting in place like certain safeguards for our environment, safeguards for our community. Neville brought up the RED Plus, which is this guideline where you can assess the readiness of a specific site or a specific community or a specific place on whether or not they're able to actually feasibly conduct carbon trading ba. Apparently a few years ago there was some similar project that was done here, but it didn't really go through. I don't know if you want to talk a bit about that. Over there. We talked about the importance of accountability. That was an interesting point that they had brought up in the online group yesterday with their 3D modeling that we thought was also important to think about. We also talked about the possibility of changing the designated area. We were talking about the concept of additionality. How can the NCA be more productive? Is there a possibility of switching the designated areas to areas that actually can be restored? That can create additionality. We talked about law reforms. We talked about changing the terms of the NCA altogether. We also talked about the possibility of PES, payment for ecosystem services, where people are being where the money from the NCA is being distributed to communities that are actually contributing to this restoration. But and then end of the day, we also had to ask ourselves the question of, can it really work? Like, should it work? Like, are we able to really put into place all these different things, change all these different things in order to make the NCA jalan? Because Neville brought up a very, very good point, like right at the beginning, which is that the NCA cannot really just be looked at as a project of whether like jalan or not jalan. It has the potential to like drive huge systemic change in Sabah and to like really create like equal ground for people, but are we ready for it? Like, are we capable of doing it at this current time?
Yeah, if the government really want to see it work, are they ready to give up the status quo? Are they ready to amend the laws? Because the laws that we had pretty much is a Stone Age laws. Are they ready to give up their powers? Because the chief minister has too much powers. Yeah, so the NCA should actually be about, if they're really serious about it, they really seriously need to assess whether they are ready for all of these needs. Because if not, then it's just pointless, because it's just going to be the same old thing, like previous strategic initiatives in Sabah, which is not changing anything.
Hi everyone, good morning. Okay, so I chose to co-host with Kenneth because I felt like I had something to say about this, and also it feels very triggering to me. So when we started the discussion, the first thing I wanted to put on paper was regarding our policies around media. So we have these laws like the PPPA, the Printing, Press and Publications Act of 1987. We also have the Official Secrets Act of 1972, and then we have the Sedition Act of 1948. So these laws are laws that are actively used by the government to suppress media. So for example, under the OSA, the government can tell you, don't publish this, don't write this, because this is an official secret. So certain events that are like an official secret is the 666 tragedy, and also our Malaysian Pollution Index, for example. So why Malaysian Pollution Index? Yeah. So why is, like, every time, there's like the haze punya season, kan? So when haze season comes, depending on how high the pollution levels are, sometimes it gets censored. It becomes a secret. We don't know exactly what the index of pollution is, for example. Then we have the Sedition Act. I can't talk about the history of these policies, but what I understand from the Sedition Act, it was actually an act that was implemented by the British during a time of communism when they were fighting against communists in the country. So then there's this deep history of like suppressing the communist movement, and then the AMCJ, the like Malayan communist something, where they were fighting for a Malaysia that wasn't sort of like a unified Malaysia. Like there wasn't those there wasn't that racial segregation. So this was the Communist Party at that time, and Fahmi Reza has a documentary on them, on that actually, specifically on this 10 tahun sebelum merdeka. And when I think about these policies, right, I have this very violent image in my head. This might be triggering, just to warn everyone. Like, I have this image of a person wanting to shout as their tongue is being sliced off. And it's not like a clean slice, it's this like slow, jagged slice. Because I feel like these are the policies that stops a person from finding their own voice. So then when we were unpacking the policies, we talked about freedom of speech, like I just mentioned. And then we talked about this hierarchy in the media as well, money and control. So the government can control the media using policies. They can control the media using money. But then some media is also owned by corporations or tycoons. Most of media, actually. So then corporations are also vastly linked to the government, to politicians. And so the big question is, what does ownership mean for media? Or who owns the media? Do we own the media? I don't think we own the media.
If you see the one in green, is mainly what us talking about the themes overall on art and media. So this one on censorship and self-censorship and also voicelessness, right? There were people trying to fight the system. These independent companies, these independent journalists, but they all fall under censorship and self-censorship that never went away due to these policies. Right? And because of that, even when they're thriving for a story to showcase, they cannot never talk about the 3 R's. They will talk about race, religion, and the Raja. Race, religion, and Raja. Right? Kerajaan. Right? These 3 things. And because of that, everything is gone. Your freedom of speech changed. Right? And even regarding international media, you think a lot of time they may be like, we look at it as like a savior, and then this is the way we blast it out. But what if these international companies itself are also run by big corporations and tycoons? Right? They have their own ways, but they are also censored. Right? So we talk a bit about the media. Now we'll go to the art side. The dial symbolizes that art and media is limitless. It's limitless. It goes around in full circle. Right? So you see, in the art side, we talk about the theme of exposure. Right? Why we perceive Western art against local art in terms of its value, right? You can frame it as monetary value, you can frame it as the worth it is. But a lot of people's exposure, especially in communities here, or what we knew when I grew up, it's all Western art. Right? That's what we knew. There's this form of superiority that piqued our interest. Right? So, but there's obviously a niche community in the art world. You know, you can imagine like Ilan. If you talk about exposure, Ilan probably knows absolute best of anyone in the scene. But I don't, you know. Or like Yanti doesn't, Neville doesn't. So in terms of what we see perceived of the public eye, in terms of exposure, it's still very niche. Right? And there's definitely lots of censorship as well in relation to media. If you look at like artists like Fahmi Reza or punk rock, whatever they publish, either it gets taken down or sent to jail or handcuffed for just a freedom of speech, right? But even this, not necessarily is words, right? Just the art form itself is already considered self-censorship or censorship, whatever is political. Right? So this lack of freedom of expression is causing a lot of lack of exposure. Exposure. If you cannot fully express yourself of saying, this is what I want to say, it's not going to get around, and then yet it's going to go back to this niche community. Yeah. So, and then we also say lack of empathy, right? This understanding of art. How do you feel art? We talk about a lot of feelings, right? This should be more emotionally in tune to whatever you say, whatever you draw, whatever you want to put out. Nowadays, it's all, that's pretty much gone now. It's whatever made the headline news, whatever is shocking, but that lack of feeling to connect you to art and media has been disconnected in terms of the public. Yet it still goes back to the niche community, of course, that is connected. But how do we expose that even more? So now we go to our conclusion, or our, I won't say our solutions, but it's a possible process. Right? We thought about two ways to approach this. The first one was understanding why all these policies, why all these censorship work for the government, and it's our ongoing policy, right? If we figure that out and implement into a new system, it may work. The second way is completely something new and disregard all of that and just start our own media system. So we opt for the completely new and the alternative, right? So we thought about what does the new Sabahan media system look like? The first example we said was Sarawak Report, right? They were apparently the first ones that put out the 1MDB case when no one else wanted to publish it at all. When censorship is so big, that will be taken out in a heartbeat. The whole company might have just collapsed, but they continue on. And to this day, 1MDB is still one of the biggest cases in Malaysia, internationally and locally. So what they did in process, they used specific channels. Right? They don't put up to the public masses. They did individual kampungs here or this community here. They reached out to everyone specifically. Because sometimes in public as a whole may not reach everyone. But if you approach everyone specifically to tell about this, and then they go talk about someone else, things will expand. So, but then how does that work? Like, what is the theme of it? Because a lot of it is own stories, right? That you want to put out in this new media system. And we talk about own stories, it's self-power. That you want to tell your own story. But then it gave us a thought, how did they cross the bridge between self-power against self-censorship? Then made it work. Because if you don't have your self-power, you're suppressed by this self-censorship that you don't want to get things out. And that's the main bit, finding your own self-power. What is self-power? Take it for Kitikan, it's you gotta have the balabak. You know, you gotta have the balls. You have to find your own voice and put it out there. Right? This is what, once you find what's within you to get it out, that is your self-power, and you might defeat self-censorship. Then we think about what's this system within this new media system. What are the technicalities, right? Definitely one is loopholes. How do you navigate the existing system? Because if you say the wrong thing, you're going to go to jail anyways. You're going to say this, you're going to get it, things like that. So someone has to be knowledgeable in policies within the new system. What is this framework? Right? The framework in news media system is usually you have your editor-in-chief, you have your journalists, you have your junior journalists. But do we need all that to run a media system? You know, we can have an admin manager. We could have artists all around. We could have media lawyers involved. We could have production houses. What would that look like in terms of disseminating news? And then Yuan came and talked about art school. And most of the time when you tell someone about art school, they think about like fine arts or learning how to paint or learning the ins and out or technicalities. But somehow I start perceiving it as, yes, critical thinking. How do you tell honest stories? But these art school could also train the framework for new media systems, right? What would that look like training teams of investigative journalists, for example, or this type of editor or this type of filmmaker to create this new media system? But then we also thought about what can the public do as well. Then we thought about the concept of citizen science, right? But then you apply it to as citizen media. Because what if we took stories from there that is generally out in the public that is not bound by policies? You know, they themselves can also be investigative journalists, right? So what if this art school also thought about this citizen media in a sense? What would this framework look like? We want to address all these honest stories, these vulnerabilities and feelings in impacts of news. We want to reconnect people's emotions to news and media. Even through like documentaries, right? Where it may not be the most flashy story, but if it's due to your heart's content and you feel it's right, it should be out there. How do we override this system? How do we override the agenda? And taking from Fahmi's book, right? How his version of the Sedition Act, he called it Akta Sakit Hati, right? What if we base that as the policy of this new media system? If you feel it in your heart, it breaks your heart, it makes you happy, then it's a story that should be put out there regardless. Right? So this new Sabah media system, if this can be formed, is something that properly circulates this art and media in our society. Yeah. And hopefully it properly circulates art and media in our society.